Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Today is Monday, February 28th. Starting later today, stayed up late last night. I've been staying up late over the whole weekend watching Archive 81 on Netflix, really. I feel like they've made a TV series there, or Netflix series there, based on this Italian movie that I barely remember. I'm not sure I logged in yesterday, but it seems like it probably reset anyways. Where the general idea of the Italian movie is that someone is restoring a film and then that person starts to see parts of their own memories and their own life in that film, and by expanding what was a movie length story around that concept into a TV length concept, it creates an interesting mystery. Oddly though, Archive 81 is really just a mystery. It's got a couple of jump scares and some spooky scenes certainly, but I hardly would call it a horror movie or a TV series. There's just not enough gore or violence really happening. It's suspense and mystery with a little bit of fear, but it's somewhat intriguing also, and it does feel like in expanding it they are going in a different direction. One of the things about the original movie that I think inspired this, at least, was that it was a woman in the movie watching footage of a woman. In the Netflix series, it's a black man watching footage of a white woman from 25 years in the past. So there's obviously some difference there. An actual pendulum summon. Pendulum summoning seems like an awesome ability, but something that nobody ever uses when we spectate these videos. But then again, you only have to spectate one video a day, so you're only really seeing one game per day anyways. So over the weekend, because I had finished with Fallout 3, I scheduled some videos. I did decide to make a slight change in how I label some of these spotlight videos. Like, I had been, up until this point, labeling videos that I do a full playthrough in one episode as a spotlight. I've decided to label those now full playthroughs, and now the playlist that was for just spotlights is for spotlights and full playthroughs. I think that makes a lot of sense, and frankly I should have been doing that at the very beginning. And it just didn't occur to me. I also am debating about what to do as far as series. I'm up to like series 45, 46 as far as collections of games I've covered over the course of 3-4 months. But that number is getting fairly high, and it's probably not worth the effort, but I could see myself trying to just straight up break it back down into years, because it's been 7 years at least running this YouTube channel with only the infinitesimally small amount of success that I've had. But at a certain point, the audience of one, which is me, is still satisfied in the content I'm making, so I'm not super upset by that. And there is a very real possibility, had I not started this YouTube channel 7 years ago, I would have spent the last 7 years not playing any video games at all. And yeah, I don't think I would have liked that or wanted that. If anything, there might be an argument that over the course of my YouTube channel, I've played too many familiar games and not enough non-familiar games and new games. But I've definitely played some new games too. But yeah, I scheduled some video. I also started to wrap up Shadowverse. I had to struggle for several hours to beat the final boss in the Shadowverse solo mode, story mode, and so now I'm starting to go through that visual novel, and really all that is reinforcing to me is that I should only play visual novels that are the best of the best. It is not worth your time to go through a mediocre visual novel story, particularly in the case of Shadowverse, one that's not going to actually end. It's going to be at a good end point when I finish, but it's not going to be completely finished ever. And it's just kind of silly to have that visual novel aspect. And one thing particularly Yu-Gi-Oh! Could do, and I'd like to see all collectible card games do, because there should probably be some kind of story mode, but I would love it if the story mode, and this may sound stupid, was hidden behind a pack opening. So we've got enough of this just to open, well, I guess we'd have to open 10 packs now. Is this the time to open 10 packs? Probably not. Do we have enough gems to open 10 packs here? That doesn't really make sense either. It would have to be something around this. Like, would I want to open 10 packs in this expansion? Or, and I'm just potentially considering doing this for an example. I could open 10 packs in this expansion. This would be fine. Yeah. So, you open a pack, or in this case 10 packs, because this in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's always better to do 10 packs. And what they should do is right now they should start doing a story mode where most of the screen is just a full screen animated story. And in the case of Yu-Gi-Oh! They could straight up have a secret live stream of the Yu-Gi cartoon. Just episode 1 starts right now, and just in the corner the packs start to open. Now, of course, that gets in the way of the flash and circumstance here of getting people hyped about opening cards, but maybe make it an optional mode where, like, instead of this big screen, which even in this there's a lot of empty space, you just have one card that slowly comes up, and then you're watching the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game happen, and it shows the card that you're getting like that. Even actually for the case of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, you probably have enough episodes where you probably have a Wikipedia that says what cards appear in a new what cards appear in every episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it could be a case where you have to collect at least one card that appears in that episode to see that episode, and then you could potentially trick people into buying card packs to get a single episode of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, which was really the value in a single episode of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. I imagine if you're if you're buying Blu-rays or DVDs of a Yu-Gi-Oh series, you're getting 26 episodes for like $70. So somewhere around maybe $3 an episode. You're getting about that same amount in opening a card pack if you're using if you're buying crystals. Plus, that would create a situation where everything is out of order. So for people who would want to watch like the entire first series of Yu-Gi-Oh, they would have to jump through so many hoops to get everything, get those episodes. And that requires no animation at all, because it could straight up just be a fairly low bitrate stream from a secret Twitch stream or YouTube video. And you could just integrate it into your app that way. And of course, that's something only Yu-Gi-Oh can do. Hearthstone doesn't have a whole cartoon that it could just go around that. So for the story mode in Hearthstone, of which there is very little story mode in Hearthstone, that'd be a lot harder. And Shadowverse really feels like it should probably be closer to the way Magic the Gathering does it, where they just pay really good authors, or relatively really good authors, to write books to tell the stories around Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering hires authors to write books around Magic the Gathering, and then they sell the books at a high markup as a separate thing, and then they don't even bother to put that into Magic Arena. Because, yeah, Shadowverse definitely does not feel like it would Shadowverse definitely does not feel like a game that gets a single new player because of its story mode. Nor do I think anybody goes to Shadowverse to play the solo story mode. Probably, if I was just trying to waste things, open a whole nother 10 packs. Of course, this then again comes back down to these secret packs. And with the secret packs, I would burn through things far too fast. So I don't think we'll be opening any of these secret packs. And there definitely are some of these secret packs that I either haven't seen too often or haven't seen ever before. Because I'm only getting a couple of cards for them. But it is important to remember that the secret packs also give you 4 of the basic cards and 4 of the expansion cards. So they're not really the best way to get specific cards unless you really are looking for something special. And even then, it's still probably not the best way to do things. Let's see. But yeah, I'll struggle through Shadowverse story mode and be done with it. Then it's time to move on to something else. which I'm not 100% sure what that something else will be. It would probably be something like a mist game, something simple and laid back. Try and finish up some series. 74 of 100 secret packs, which could mean that there are 26 secret packs I've never seen, or it could just mean that I need to find 26 generic secret packs anyways, which probably means I will get this completely done when the next card expansion comes about. As far as a lot of these other things, either you're just going to get some of this done or very little of this done by the time the next expansion happens, or you're just going to get it all done. Like normal summoning a monster, you could easily just through playing get that number up to 3,000, or it could certainly be a much longer experience. The Duelist level right now, we're at 20 of 50, so it'll be interesting to see with the new expansion, do they increase the Duelist level, or does the Duelist level just max out at 50 and that is that? I wouldn't be surprised if it is just it maxes out at that level. All we need to do is win ranked duels today, which makes that pretty easy. The festival is gone, so we have no real other choice as far as anything else to do. I wanted to point out the disaster report for Summer Memories, which is mostly positive and on my wish list, is right now discounted at $29.99, which is not particularly cheap. I think also you very well might want to get all the costumes selling this, although a judo black belt outfit and hunting cap and jacket and fishmonger outfits, all of those are not much as far as skins. This is, I believe, the first Disaster Report game on Steam that also supports English. Up until this point, the Disaster Report games have not wanted to really leave Japan because it's kind of its own story experience of a massive earthquake or some other disaster happening in Japan and people surviving. It's a very different type of survival game. It's an urban survival game instead of other survival games where you're always in the forest and just looking for generic water, generic food. But right now it is discounted. That is the lowest price. It is definitely that Japanese premium markup, but if that interests you at all, as it does interest me, it's on sale right now for a week, and you might want to take concern with that. OBS wanted to remind people today is the last day to use the Twitch version 5 API goes. Today is the day that the Twitch version 5 API goes offline. Please ensure you've upgraded OBS Studio to the latest version 27.2 plus, or else you will not be able to use the Connect Account feature to stream on Twitch. Which, there was a Connect Account feature for YouTube, but there was something specifically about it that I made it more difficult than just using the stream key. So I tried it and then I removed it. And I'll probably eventually go over to that. I'm definitely hearing all the nonsense that's happening with Windows 11. Do not look forward to the idea of moving to Windows 11. Although in all fairness, I think when I built this computer was probably installing Windows 7 on it, and that just magically jumped to Windows 10 without much input on my part. But yeah, I think I would really like to skip Windows 11, and maybe if Valve gets really good at getting all their games running on Steam, their Arch Linux Steam OS, maybe I would consider going to that, but I don't know. I have too many other programs and things I mess with, and Windows just has that momentum of decades for Windows software behind it. And the problem is, even if until there is like a massive groundswell of people not using Windows at all, it's really hard to convince old software developers to make for any other operating system. And it's already kind of past that point where the vast majority of people use iPhone or Mac OS or Android phones as their daily driver computer, and only maybe in an office they're sitting in front of a computer. So there has been a lot of people that have made mobile phone apps to replace a lot of the functionality of other apps on Windows. But there's the legacy app developers that are making Windows apps haven't really gone on board on that. Speaking of missing the point, YouTube Gaming decided to retweet a very safe, very popular, in their minds, streamer, Linux Text Tips, talking about the Steam Deck. Yeah, I guess a lot of people are going to eventually start calling it the Switch Deck by accident. Quoting him as the most innovative gaming PC in 20 years, maybe more maybe. What's funny here is, like, Linux Tech Tips is part of Floatplane. They own Floatplane, which is an almost direct competitor to YouTube, and YouTube Gaming is promoting him. He's not a gamer per se. He does play games, but that's not what his channel's about. He's not particularly that safe. He literally was getting yelled at just a few weeks ago for saying that watching things with ad blocking is piracy, which is an insane thought, because it really boils down to him believing that people have the right to other people's mind and eyes and brain and their thoughts and their time. Content creators have the right they own their viewers' thoughts, mind, eyes, brain, and time. Which, if anything, if you want to make a hot take, the hot take is the other way. Advertising, putting advertisers in front of people, is akin to piracy. If piracy is stealing something from somebody else, stealing someone else's time by putting ads in things is much closer to piracy than someone individually deciding that they don't want to waste their time watching your dumb ads. Even if they do want to watch your content, it really is a case where it should be creator beware, and creators do know and should know that, hey, you're putting your content out there, and even if you paywall it, somebody is going to upload that paywall. There's just going to be a percentage of people that are not going to buy into or agree with your advertisement scheme, even if they did click some checkbox agreeing to it. But yeah, this is like the worst person I would say that YouTube Gaming should be tweeting, because they should be tweeting somebody who actually talks about gaming. And I watched this video, and one of the things I'll be critical of it is it doesn't get into the real depth, and I've yet to see something where it gets really into the depth of what games work and what games don't work, and how the games feel. But yeah, the main thing I think I take away from that as a content creator is just like this is another example of YouTube via YouTube Gaming promoting winners and then doubling down and re-promoting winners over and over again. Like, at the core, Linus Text Tips, Linus there, is a very lucky, very successful business owner, and that has pushed him, even though he still is the face of a lot of the videos, to be fairly disconnected from what most people, how most people think and interact with the world. That's why him thinking that people should watch ads is what comes from. It's where a lot of, I think, his hot takes and ridiculous thoughts come from, is that he's coming from it. It's like, I've got this business, I've got all these people have to pay, I've got all this money, and I've got no time. He is not living the average worker's experience, even in Canada where he is, where the rent is extremely expensive and it's hard to find good housing and you're barely making enough to make ends meet. Instead, he's living this life where he gets just free thing after free thing after free thing handed to him, and very often not having to be returned as far as free computer things. And he's moving into this giant house. And let's not beat around the bush. Linus Tech Tips is incredibly packed with advertisements. It is obnoxiously ad-centric, selling his own dumb merchandise. Or selling some other sponsored advertising. It's long, it's interrupty, it's bad. It's kind of like the worst example of advertising. Moving on, back to video games though. Sony is ending the PS3 console and peripheral support in Japan. This is a Video Games Chronicles article. The ESA retweeted this local Fox channel, Fox 5 in DC, that did this interview, this interview called "The Impact of Video Games on Teenage Mental Health," and the CEO of the ESA joins Fox 5 Morning Saturday to talk about the good and bad impacts of video games on the mental health of teenagers. And this video doesn't even want to load for some reason, probably because of my ad blockers, which you'd almost assume that the Foxes are like Fox News, but it's not 100% the case. They all do tend to lean a little bit more right-wing, but in DC, I wouldn't be surprised if the Fox 5 actually leans fairly left-wing, even there. So without being able to see what is said here, and not really needing to waste my time to watch a video that is just going to be a puff piece and a propaganda piece that's pro video games, with admitting that there is an occasional bad mental health thing that happens to teens who play video games. At the end of the day, if your teenager isn't playing video games, then he is completely disconnected from his peer group, because everybody else is doing it. And sadly, I would say the same thing is if they were all smoking e-cigarettes or anything like that, like drinking. Like, of course, smoking and drinking is actually addictive. chemically addictive to the body and very detrimental. And the good news is I think most teens these days, for the most part, know it's bad for them, and would probably, I would definitely be much more happier if I had a teenager smoking marijuana versus smoking tobacco, and not drinking at all. But if they are drinking like Bud Lights or something, and not drinking hard liquor, not knowing the difference. I'd like them to actually know the difference as far as the alcohol base and how much that you shouldn't be drinking entire like glasses, like drinking glassfuls of what would be a hard liquor that you should only be drinking an ounce of. But my point is, I'd rather have, it's better for your kid to be socially accepted instead of this weirdo. And then at a weird point, if you are part of something like Mormonism or something, where the entire social group is fairly bland and not doing that, then you would want to stay within that group too. Although in all fairness, I think most Mormon teenagers are sneaking off doing things their parents don't know about anyways. This is an odd way to start this statement, certainly, I now recognize. My point is, yes, you do want to be, you want to, like, hope that your teenagers by now knows the old adage, stick and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt me. And you would definitely want to monitor your teenagers' mental health. I think there is definitely some lessons that need to be learned in playing video games, that teenage time is the perfect time to try and teach these lessons about anger management and not throwing controllers down or punching walls. Because if you're potentially starting to have those problems as a teenager, and your parents are wise enough to identify that and help you work through that now, then you probably aren't going to grow up to be the kind of abuser when you're dating somebody and somebody's pissing you off or arguing with you or yelling at you. If you deal with those kind of positive reactions to frustration versus negative reactions in a safer, less impactful way of video games, punching a hole in the walls and learning not to punch a hole in the wall is way better as a teenager than punching a significant other. And take note, I'm trying really hard not to gender this because it would be very easy to slide into the stereotype of angry male teenager turning into angry male wife beater. But it kind of happens on the other way too. So video games can be a way to like safely explore frustration, which frustration will be in your life, so you can't shield your teenager from frustration at the time. Of course, there's going to be a percentage of teenagers who are just straight up basket cases, total mental problems, probably shouldn't be playing video games or any kind of video games that would impact their mental health poorly. Like I can personally attest to my own mental health as a teenager and throughout my life, and there was a very specific time where before I started my YouTube channel where I was not particularly feeling super mentally healthy, and I wasn't particularly happy, and that did not lead to nor come from playing video games, because I was not mentally happy, and I know exactly why I wasn't, and I wasn't playing video games because of that. And I found joy and respite in playing video games, but I was so unhappy I couldn't even find that joy at that time. And I can tell you throughout my entire life of playing video games, there's never been a time where I've played a video game and it has made me so significantly less happy, whereas there's been almost, I'd say the vast majority of times I do play a video game, it does make me happy and improve my mental health, in my opinion, at least a little bit. Now, there are some really crappy games out there, and they can get boring, certainly. And if I wasn't being a YouTuber, I would probably just rage quit those games. And that is one aspect, certainly, to teach a teenager when playing video games, is that you can always turn it off. Like, this gives you that special ability to just turn it off, disconnect. I also don't play online games, so I actively avoid any kind of griefing or things like that. So that is never been an issue for me. Never been anything I've engaged in, but I've certainly heard people that do like to grief saying that that's their form of entertainment and they enjoy that. And sometimes they straight up have a group of friends that just like to grief each other, which is better than doing jackass style stunts in the real world for sure. So yeah, I mean, without getting into a longer rant, there's no getting around it. You definitely want to monitor your kids' experiences when playing video games, whether it's single player or online. Most of the time the concern is mostly online, but you cannot have a teenager not play a video game. You barely can have a teenager that doesn't have a cell phone, and there is, I think, a lot more danger in general that, once again, you can't really control it too much, of teenagers just being able to go anywhere on the internet and not being able to control it. Because, like, you give a kid the access to the internet, or they find a way to get access to the internet, they can go to a library, they can go probably within 10 meters of where they're standing is 3 or 4 different ways to connect to the internet. And if they want to, or if they're just not careful, it's not that hard to end up watching a beheading video. It's not that hard to end up on a site full of hateful rhetoric and mentality. And that's just something new we have to teach kids to protect themselves from and be aware of those things, because you can't protect them forever. Eventually they have to grow up, and this is the world that exists. And I think in general, I'd say parents are doing a kind of decent chance. This whole Ukrainian situation right now, I imagine you probably need to sit your kids down and go, listen, there's going to be a lot of talk about this, a lot of anger around this. The people often are very rightfully so angry, but they often are not being effective, and sometimes they're not being truthful. You have to assume that there's a lot of fake news, and there's going to be a lot of talk, in particular, of it getting worse or it getting better, and we're just not going to know. That we've historically known that in the trenches of World War I and World War II, I'm sure everybody had a rumor that, oh, the battle is about to be lost, the battle is about to be won. It's just fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD, as it's called, and you're perfectly welcome to realize that this is probably not affecting you. So check out a little bit. Just now would be a great time to actually have kids play single-player video games and just check out from the news and not watch the news. What will happen, and while you can donate some money to the Red Cross, that's about as much as somebody in the United States can do. If you were to, particularly in the United States, think about like joining the military, it would be 6 months to a year before you would even be ready to be deployed, and by that time, who knows what would happen. and that would be under the assumption that the United States would ever send any kind of troops to Ukraine. So that's kind of a silly action to take. Joining the U.S. military is kind of a silly action to take always. Particularly risky action. So, yeah. And I will try not to talk too much about Ukraine today, because I'm sure everybody's hearing it, and everybody probably has already figured out they don't want to hear any more about it. It definitely has made the internet incredibly boring. But I would say for kids, it's just like, tell them to kind of check out of that. And I wouldn't be surprised if kids have their teachers talking about news. That was something that, in retrospect, I know when I was in high school and junior high, there were definitely teachers that were talking about news and politics every now and then, and they really shouldn't have been. I can kind of give it a pass for like September 11th happening during the day, but it probably would have been nice if there had been just a policy to not turn on the radio, not turn on the news, not have the adult teachers even get the story, and just go about your normal day. It would have been a different experience, certainly, had the planes flown into the towers and the Pentagon, and then none of the students at my school knew anything about it, and we got home and got told by our own parents individually what had happened. Because that was definitely a situation where, while I was in high school, there was nothing I could have done about it. There was nothing the teachers could have done about it. Knowing that the events of September 11th was happening really didn't help anything other than distract from learning that day's lessons, and cause anxiety and fear to sprout up in people. And that's something that, particularly after that, should just be a standard policy. And I bet it's not. I bet there's plenty of teachers out there that they would do that still would have talked about breaking news. And there are definitely teachers that were talking about just very generic things. Even a couple times where they were just talking about politics things. Yeah, I think in elementary school there was like a mock election between like Bush and Gore originally, the original Bush and Gore run where Bush won. And there was just really no reason for politics to even begin to be introduced to elementary school students, and that undoubtedly was something that the teachers were doing to try and push people in a certain way. Like, it really was not an exercise in teaching people about democracy at all. It really couldn't have been, because democracy in the United States in particular is a much more complicated system than everybody votes and then whoever gets the popular vote wins. If anything, that's teaching the absolute wrong lesson, because that's not how it works in the United States with its representative republic style of government. It's always important in general to not teach kids the wrong thing and set the foundation for misunderstanding. Well, that was a weird rant, and I'll just leave it at that. Here we have a game on Steam called Awake in Dark Space, which this was opened on Friday, and so I left it to look at. I don't see anything particularly special about this. It looks like it's just a horror game with dark screenshot syndrome. Possibly walking around looking for masks and letters. Maybe solving a few puzzles. Let's see. I don't think I'm gonna win here. Just has all these chains to cancel everything. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Apex Legends Mobile will launch in select regions next week. Android and iOS in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and more. But not the United States, so either it already is released in the United States, or they're trying to have a slower launch. I really would have to double check to see if Apex Legends is particularly that popular anymore. Elden Ring is officially one of the best reviewed games ever. Let's not surrender here. I don't think there's too much to say around that, other than the fact that there is, ironically, still a possibility that being one of the best reviewed games ever, it is still going to come out that From Software is not satisfied with the sales, or not satisfied with the reviews, or they still don't pay out bonuses for some insane reason to some people. Those are all speculative things that I wouldn't be surprised of happening, because yeah, the whole review system is kind of a pointless, broken system, and has been for probably decades, and maybe from the beginning, because it is just not really around that. It's kind of interesting in that video games get these number score reviews, whereas most other things, like the Oscars, the Tonys, the Golden Globes, the Emmys, all of them just give out awards. So it's just like, you're good enough to get an award or you're not. You're the best that year or you're not, according to whoever votes in those events. And even then, most of those events people say are pointless and rigged, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I could definitely see getting rid of the numerical scores and just moving to a thumbs up, thumbs down system. They've lost any kind of scale or value in that anything that's awful still gets a 7.5. Anything that's perfect still tends to get a 95 out of 100. There's too many arguments around just nobody willing to give something a 0 and nobody willing to give something a 100. And the real irony at the moment is Elden Ring still runs pretty awful, last I heard, on PC, where people really wanted to play it. It seems to have that same micro stuttering issue that I started seeing with the Windows 10 update for Resident Evil 4 and the Lego games, which makes me wonder, if I were to buy Elden Ring and play it, which I really don't have any interest in playing Elden Ring at all. I was never really their audience, I suppose. But if I was to buy it, I wonder if I could actually adjust the settings and get it to run without the micro stuttering. DF Retro, I believe, explained it as a shader compilation micro stuttering. Every time a new effect or shader has to be rendered, it pauses and stutters because it's not been optimized. And that sounds exactly like what was happening with the Lego games, is that every time there was a new explosion or a new texture, it would get slower and slower and worse and worse. Moving on, EA CEO tells staff it's been impeded by the FIFA brand. It's 4 letters on the box. CEO Andrew Wilson claimed in an international meeting that FIFA is holding back the football series, which I think really this is probably a lot of sour grapes, because they know the FIFA license is gotten too expensive and they want to break free from it, or they are breaking free from it, or FIFA's not renewing with it. At a certain point though, I can't disagree with them either though. Like, EA can make just as good of a soccer game by not putting FIFA on the front of the box. What is more questionable is it as enjoyable for soccer fans if all of the characters are not based off of real world FIFA players? Because I assume that's really what the license is getting you, is the likenesses of all those different FIFA players. But I don't know if people particularly care about individual FIFA players. From a United Statesian perspective, if they made a football game and it didn't have NFL on it and it didn't have the likeness of any of the NFL players, I think that probably would lose you a decent amount of your audience. Whereas for me, not being particularly that interested in football games, American football games anyways, I wouldn't care one bit. I'd be more than happy to play a soccer game, an American football game like NES football, where it's just tiny little pixel characters, as much as I would be happy to play something that was NFL branded. Now, oddly, I would not say the same thing for WWE. Like, the personalities of the wrestlers just plays a much bigger role, in my opinion, for wrestling games, that you really do need the likenesses and the nostalgia of those characters. But the wrestling games also bring back or keep really, really old wrestlers, whereas most NFL games, I imagine, aren't bringing back famous wrestler football players. So, yeah, I don't think you're able to play as just to pick an old football player name that would be recognizable. You're almost certainly not able to play as O.J. Simpson, for instance, in the past, or younger versions of Tom Brady. So, yeah. So I think they kind of probably are missing that beat as an idea. But yeah, I really would have to do more research to find out if people in Europe who love FIFA games care about the FIFA players or not. Because I kind of feel like the point of going to a soccer game in Europe is you go and you get a little drunk and you just sit around and get out of your tiny houses and enjoy usually somewhat decent weather. I don't think it is like in the United States where people go to football games, then they come home and talk about the football games, and then they play their fantasy football, and they know all the stats, and they know all the people by name. And they talk about Tom Brady over and over again, and that they, on a weekly basis, potentially have 3 or 4 conversations about a football player and how much they love that football player. I just don't think there's as many super fans for FIFA like that. Alright, well, I'm doomed. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says, BioWare says Dragon Age is in the middle of production, new Mass Effect is in a prototyping phase. This feels like a bit of an update of what we had already heard. There is certainly a question as to, do you even need to make a new Mass Effect, or just make a new game that kind of feels like Mass Effect but is in a different universe and can potentially have yet another new interface and control, because the controls drastically changed in Mass Effect 1, in Mass Effect 2 compared to Mass Effect 1. And I think the real magic as far as Dragon Age and Mass Effect is telling interesting stories and going back to the same universe. While it may have an air of familiarity, particularly with Mass Effect, it's probably not the most conducive way to tell new interesting stories. Plus, we kind of know that the people who made Mass Effect 1 are not really in the same mentality or the same people at all that made the remaster of Mass Effect 1, because the people that came out and remastered Mass Effect 1 censored and edited a lot of the camera angles and decisions, and really didn't make a pure remaster. Not that that's really enough of a reason not to play the remaster or to play the original version of Mass Effect 1. It just goes to show that I suspect people that would work on a new Mass Effect are probably going to be a little bit more woke than the people that made Mass Effect 1, and then that is going to cause it to feel a little bit different, and then the fans are going to feel like something is slightly off, I would suspect. Moving on, Twitch streaming has returned to the Xbox dashboard. Microsoft says this feature is back, re-engineered, and better than ever. So, I actually saw a slick deals for a Xbox Series S for like $250, and that actually looked like a pretty good deal if you just need an Xbox Series S to replace things like a Xbox One or Xbox 360 with the backward compatibility. There's definitely a lot of room there. I have a lot of Video Games Chronicles articles today, so I'm wondering if I have gone back to some repeated stuff, because this all feels like stuff that we'd already covered. Leaders who enable toxic cultures must go, says the EA's exec. Laura Mealy calls out bosses who fall short of basic standards. Of course, this is a leading EA executive who said this in a DICE 2022 keynote speech. You know, it's a little sexist, I would say, though, to just call her a leading executive without giving her actual title. Yeah, you have to get way down here into the second paragraph before they say EA's EVP, which I don't know what the E stands for. I guess that's Executive Vice President or Chief Operating Officer and Chief Operating Officer. They really need to expand these titles just so people know for certain. Yeah. But yeah, this is kind of a great example of wanting to get a headline and then stripping a female of her name and just calling her an EA executive. It would have been certainly easy to just go EA apostrophe S says EA's Laura Miley, all in the headline. Excuse me. But, and we certainly have seen in Video Games Chronicle in the past, if we're just going to be compare apples to apples, we've seen Bobby Kodak's name in the headline, and we've seen other top level executives' names in the headline. And I'm not even accusing Video Games Chronicles of intentionally doing this. This is just how these mistakes can happen, and you have to guard yourself against it. Even in an effort here to be an ally to feminism, they've failed pretty horribly. And this sub-headline, which really they're just trying to have two bites at the apple, is much better. Laura Miley calls out bosses who fall short of basic standards. You could add EA's Laura Miley again as one headline, but then you kind of strip her of her name on the first paragraph again, which that's just not acceptable regardless of who you're talking about, to lose details. It's not informative, it's not helpful for people who are trying to actually get facts in your news articles, and it probably highlights how little a lot of video game journalists even care about giving facts to the audience. They only care about getting you to look at ads. They only care about getting you to think the way they think. And that's just not good journalism. I would also say we never see a male executive with a photo that is kind of outside and blurred and photoshopped. We never see zoomed in headshots of male executives. This doesn't feel like she's wearing a kind of professional outfit. It feels like she's wearing a denim shirt and out in the field doing some kind of like I'm in a forum type shoot. And this isn't the first time we've seen glamour shots for female executives and then standard, here's the top 2/3 of my body in a suit standing in an office, usually an office that is right behind like Activision or whatever company they stand for, they work for. Yep. Well, I won't rant about that anymore, but certainly there's problems there. And that's where a good editor is needed to try and make sure that you see these problems and you catch these problems. You don't want it to devolve into a woke fest where everybody on staff is seeing a microaggression for every action, but some of that feedback can be helpful. Like there really was some legitimate arguments that established the woke movement. The problem is that the social justice warriors and the woke movement have become slacktivists and really demanding other people to change while not even doing the basic effort to change themselves or do the same things they preach other people should do. Yeah. What's that old saying? Make sure there isn't a before you point out that there's a splinter in my eye, you should remove the log that's in yours. That's probably a really poorly remembered version of that saying, but yeah. Moving on, Steam players can now check which games in the library will run the Steam Deck. We could launch this again for a third time. Let's see. Steam Deck compatibility. Last time we checked, a couple, like 40 games had been checked and added. So over the weekend, let's see how many more. It doesn't seem like much has changed over the weekend. 1381, I feel like that's exactly the same as Friday. So it definitely feels like they're not working on the weekends. And the Steam Deck is succeeding kind of beyond Valve's wildest hopes. So it wouldn't hurt for them to have said, hey, let's put some more men on this. Yeah, we definitely talked about Machine Gun Kelly being playable in WWE 2K22. Nintendo acquiring SRD. I'll have to check on Wednesday to see if we start getting the same articles again. We talked about the Xbox Live's games. Flame in the Flood, Street Power Soccer, Sacred 2 Fallen Angel, and SpongeBob's Truth or Squares. Let's see, we talked about the Day 1 patch being detailed. We definitely talked about the Martha is Dead being censored content. There was an interesting conversation I had in the real world about the censored Martha is Dead content, because it really is, because the content that is being censored is disgusting content. It's intentionally supposed to be disgusting content. It's hard to get in the minds of a lot of people who don't want to see disgusting content why censorship is bad when using an example like this, which is always the slippery slope of censorship. Nobody is going to come out and remove like the Book of John from the Bible, for instance, and censor that, and then think that there would be no outrage from that. Like, something that is generally considered acceptable would not be the first target for censorship. Although there have been a couple of times in which the Bible has been censored. Washington made a Bible that removed all the, like, the magical references and the God references. I don't know if it was all references to God specifically or just all of the more magical elements of the Bible. The slaves' Bibles were heavily censored and translated. A lot of the versions of the Bibles have been slightly censored and translated with a specific agenda to promote certain ideas, and they've been mistranslated intentionally. But generally speaking, the mainstream content that most people watch and see are not going to be censored. Or if they are censored, nobody's going to really care that much. It's hard to make an argument about, say, removing one of the sequences in a Disney movie like Song of the South. It's hard to make an argument about Song of the South being removed from Disney Plus And yet we still had to make that argument, and I think, yeah, I don't think Song of the South ever was actually on Disney Plus, but several other cartoons and things were. And they eventually put a warning and brought some of them back, but also there's been other issues, things that have been removed. So yeah, it's a hard conversation to say that, look, this is a gory Italian game that is adults only, and it's trying to push the limits, and it's trying to establish that artists should be able to express themselves and tell the story they want to tell without interference of Sony or anyone else, without censorship. And yes, maybe this isn't the stuff you want to see, but if you're not riled up about something being censored, even though you don't want to see it, you don't want to read that book, you don't want to look at that art, then you are thinking about it completely wrong. If your brother or sister was the artist making a game like Martha's is Dead, and you didn't want to ever play that game, and it's just not your style of entertainment, and it's not the journey you want to go on, it's not the story you want to be told, you still should be, and would more than likely be, upset if you found out that your brother or your sister was being censored and not being allowed to express themselves the way they want to. And that is the attitude that everyone should take. Moving on, this Pokemon presentation happened, but we haven't gotten to the new news yet. The Ascent has been officially confirmed. We had already covered that. Destiny 2, here's everything you need to check out in the Witch Queen article from Video Games Chronicles. I don't care about Destiny 2, so we are in a situation here where we're kind of back to playing ranked dueling in Yu-Gi-Oh! And we're looking either for quick disconnects or lucky victories in some other way. Forza Horizon 5's first DLC could be arriving soon, according to Video Games Chronicles. Fallout New Vegas is reportedly in very early talks at Microsoft. Obsidian could be working on a sequel. Obsidian made the first Fallout New Vegas game. They did not make the Bethesda made Fallout 3 or Fallout 4, but Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 not blowing people out of the water. Frankly, they just don't have enough team to make the next Elder Scrolls game, support Starlink, potentially think about making a Starlink 2, and make a Fallout 5 all at once. So some of these licenses have to start to be handed over to other people. And they always have been. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if 60-70% of Bethesda games, even going back as Fallout 3 or earlier, were actually being made by third-party companies. Having just finished playing Fallout 3, I wouldn't be surprised if there was 3 or 4 independent companies that were making different buildings, different dungeons, different sections, different stories. There was kind of a very small amount of consistency anyways from things. Almost certainly Bethesda did the main story of Fallout 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do any of the DLC in it. I wouldn't be surprised if half of the dungeons and level designs were made by either interns or third-party companies. So now that Microsoft has acquired so many companies, what we may be seeing with these acquisitions is the death of the independent third-party developer that was taking contracts. Platinum, for instance, took a lot of contracts with Activision to make terrible Ninja Turtles, Legend of Korra, and Transformer games. And that was basically the thing that kept Platinum Games alive just long enough for them to make Nier Automata and succeed. And even at that, I would still say Platinum Games is still always on the cusp of potential failure, because they have to get these games either funded or approved by somebody like Nintendo. Bayonetta 2 wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Nintendo. Bayonetta 3, it seems to be done and ready, and yet Nintendo seems to not want to really release it, which that feels like that might be hurting Platinum in some weird way. But yeah, usually, as I understand it, a publishing deal would be that if Nintendo was the publisher for Bayonetta 3, they paid the entire development time of Platinum Games making Bayonetta 3, and Platinum Games won't get any more money until Bayonetta 3 is released, and the advertisement money and the initial investment money from that they paid for during the years of development for Bayonetta 3 has been covered, which potentially means that Platinum Games will never see another dime from Bayonetta 3 unless it becomes a major success, which is a decent chance of that. So if Nintendo is just sitting on it, they're basically either not willing to advertise it, or don't even care about recovering the amount that they would have paid Platinum to pay employees to develop Bayonetta 3. But with acquisitions, as far as Microsoft is perspective, they now basically own those companies, and so they're paying to keep those employees around anyways. So there is no longer the need to have meetings and contracts. Larry Hurd, Major Nelson, can straight up say, alright, Bethesda, you're going to hand this over to Obsidian because we own you and we own Obsidian, and that's going to be that. There doesn't have to be any negotiation. There doesn't have to be any meetings. And if somebody is falling behind, Major Nelson can say, alright, Obsidian, you're falling behind, so we're going to give you everybody that works at Double Fine to help you, and they're going to work on New Vegas too. Like, Major Nelson could easily just say, all hands on deck, everybody's going to work on the next Halo game, or everybody's going to work on the next the next whatever. Yeah. So yeah, we may be seeing the death of independent contract companies, which probably is better. Most independent contract companies didn't make great games, and arguably they're not so independent if they're getting contracts from publishers to make games, where something that a gamer would more think of as an indie game would be completely made and published by that one independent company or independent person. Moving on, classic games are going to reportedly be a part of PlayStation Games Pass rival. This is all old news again. Another Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition patch is coming next week, which I can't help but feel like that is all going to be just like spinning in the wind. It's just not going to be enough. Like, the patch you would have to put up for GTA's Definitive Edition is a whole new game, and I don't think they're willing to do that. The Knockout City studio left EA behind and is making their game free to play, which probably should have been free to play in the beginning, but I think it's probably too late now. Oops, that was not the card I wanted. Let's see. The Switch's latest Nintendo 64 update fixes the Zelda's water temple room, but other issues still remain. Also, other improvements happened. Yeah, all of this is just old news, so I wonder if there's something wrong with their website, or if there was just something wrong with my program. The thing I did find out that was what I had done wrong is, and this is only going to make sense to people that know how to HTML programming. When you make a link in HTML, it is an A tag. It's a lesser than signal A and then space href equals and then whatever the URL is for that link, and then it's a greater than symbol, and that's called an A tag. You put some text after that. That is the text you actually see on the web page, and then you go lesser than signal / A greater than signal. That closes the A tag. So you open the A tag, you put your text in, you close the A tag. That's HTML tagging. There is a different tag called the H2 tag or H1 tag or H3 tag, and those are just header tags. It tells the website that this is a generic header piece of text, so it should be a little bit bigger and a little bit bolder, but we're not going to tell you specifically the size or the boldness or anything like that. We're going to let that be uniform across multiple websites. However, the user might configure that if it is configurable. I don't know if there's a single website that really would let you configure that easily. So what I've done is written the code to look for the header to flag tag, the H2 tag, and I had not put a / A in the code as it's written for UI Vision to find the A tag after the header 2 tag. So it had to have been inside a header 2 tag. There would have been an A tag or inside of that, and as such, apparently that worked like the first couple times, the first day I did it, but then when I tried to run it later, it didn't work. So I literally just had to add a / A in a couple places where the code was repeated, and it seems to work now. And had I been really thinking about it, that's fairly obvious, but it actually took more time than it probably should have, and it was kind of a bang your head against the wall situation. UI Vision with the Selenium architecture and using XPaths to find parts in a website it's not particularly a smooth process as much as I would like it to be. Alright, let's see if we can look out here. See if this really can play. Because if I can get 2 things on the field and destroy these 2 characters, and he can't counter that. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle. This War of Mines developer is donating all profits to the Ukrainian Red Cross. Of course, the problem here is you buy this World of Mine on Steam. 30% of the sales goes to Steam. Then you give the money to this War's Mine. You trust that they do what they say they're going to do and take all of their profits, not gross revenue here, just profits. Which, how do they calculate that? I have no idea, and you don't either. But yeah, you take all of those profits, and then you probably put that through some sort of payment processor that might take 30% of the remaining 70%, assuming the payment processor isn't just Valve, and there's only one payment processor. But then they give it to the Red Cross, maybe through giving it to the Red Cross is probably paying 30% on top of that, so you potentially are at somewhere around 67% of what you've donated. You're also giving it to Ukrainian Red Cross, which is nice and all, but this is in the middle of a conflict and a war. Who's to say this money actually gets into the right hands and doesn't get lost somewhere? Who's to say that Russia doesn't succeed in taking over the Red Cross or taking over all of Ukraine? There is a real danger in donating money to help Ukraine where that money literally ends up in the hands of Russia. And at the end of the day, you do all of this, and it's just the most convoluted, backwards way to try and support things. If you want to send money to the Ukrainian Red Cross, just find a way to send money to the Ukrainian Red Cross. But honestly, just sit on your money and be ready. Be ready for the unforeseeable consequences of this conflict that might very well affect you anywhere on the planet. Shortages are probably coming. Gas prices are probably coming. We're all probably going to have to tighten our belts. And if a conflict escalates, having a little bit more money to give to people who might literally have to join armies. There may be men in the United States that have to leave their families to go fight. And there may very well be people in your own neighborhood, like single mothers with 4 or 5 children, that could benefit by you handing them the same amount of money. So yeah, charity, I always would say, should start at home where you can really watch it. The best way to do charity is to literally hand cash to somebody else. Not even gift cards, not anything like that, just hand cash to people. Don't get into the ridiculousness of, oh, they'll just spend that on drugs and alcohol. Don't worry about that. If you want to do a good thing, do a good thing. Don't worry about the intentions or the actions of the person you're trying to help. But yeah, as soon as you start to include video game companies in the chain of donations, it's also worth mentioning, just tax reason wise, it is incredibly stupid to donate anything through any other company, because you don't get the tax write-offs at that point. Yeah, so I would totally not go with the idea of donating through a company that's just going to be able to lower their tax burdens. Moving on, Elden Ring hit 764 concurrent Steam play users, nearly 6 times what Dark Souls 3 ever got. So there definitely was demand there, even though it plays poorly on Elden Ring. I wonder if there's a link to Elden Ring on Steam. See if that. No, this is an old article I just opened. And then we had already talked about PC performance led to a 40% negative reviews on Steam. Video Games Chronicle is just really terrible about having links to the actual game. It does seem just like ridiculously bad about that. See, maybe this is just catch up, but it feels like almost every article here from Video Games Chronicle was just things we had already covered. I must have manually opened things and not run my macro. Valve says it's willing to help Microsoft bring PC Games Pass to Steam. For their customers is clearly a popular option. Honestly though, I have to say, as much as I think the Steam Deck is an interesting secondary PC, I am much hotter on the idea of just building a new PC in the next year or two. I think a lot of people, maybe myself excluded from this because I have a fairly new PC. I think a lot of people have pretty old PCs, and if you could go from even a Ryzen 2 to a Ryzen 3 or an Intel 7000 series to like an 8000 series, or wherever the Intels are, like the next generation of CPUs, the next generation of graphic cards. It's been probably 3 or 4 years since anybody's been able to get a really good graphics card. And there's just enough reason why Steam Deck just doesn't work for a regular PC. You just don't have that screen in front of you. You just don't have the feeling that you're going to be able to launch Word or Office style software to run on this Arch Linux. And you're definitely not going to be able to do any kind of photoshopping or video editing without learning completely different software. So yeah, I just don't feel like that they need to launch a Steam Deck dock that has a mouse and keyboard and plugs into a monitor and really can show, hey parents, buy this for your kids because they can do their homework with the Steam Deck also. Because right now the narrative is that the Steam Deck is just a Switch without the Nintendo games on it. So a Switch without Mario, just another game console. And in all reality, every cell phone, every laptop, every PC, Steam Deck, and the Switch, they're all the same hardware. They could all be running the same software if the software was set up right, but in people's minds it doesn't feel like that. And it's going to be a hard sales pitch to convince parents that kids are really doing homework with their Steam Deck instead of just playing video games on the Steam Deck. And even the video games aspect on the Steam Deck needs a lot of work as far as compatibility. Here we see a relinquished character. If I had activated this, I might have done something. But I can't activate anything here. These relinquished, thou shalt not restrict. They have to like attach other monsters to them to be able to do anything. I assume this guy is going to attach this guy here. And then that gave him some attack. Moving on, Mark Cerny's new patent could reveal plans to accelerate ray tracing on the PS5. New patent describes a method of improving performance when ray tracing is enabled, which that sounds interesting. This is Sony Interactive Entertainment putting out a patent. Mark Cerny is a PS5, PS4 engineer. So let's just go back to that previous article here. Here you have a mid-tier employee, not a top-tier chief operating executive. A mid-tier male employee. His name is right up here. In fact, so much so that they don't even put Sony Interactive Entertainment until you're below the picture, even in the second post. This again could have been SEI's or Sony's Mark Cerny's new patent. Sony's new patent from Mike Cerny, or Mike Cerny's new SEI. Could be Mark Cerny's parentheses SEI too. As for the actual article here, I mean, there's not a lot to say here. By the way, today is like the 10th anniversary of Raspberry Pi existing, which is to say that the very first Raspberry Pi Model A1 came out 10 years ago. Unfortunately, the part shortage and the Raspberry Pi part shortage in particular has been going for a very long time, so I checked Adafruit, I checked Raspberry Pi's own website. There seems to be nobody willing to put any kind of discount on the price. Now, January, February, March 14th would be Pi Day, 3.14. So maybe we'll get another sale on Pi Day, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't even get that much. Which effectively that means there is a pizza day and there's a Pi Day, and they're separate days. Since Pizza Day happened a few weeks ago. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says NVIDIA has reportedly been, quote, completely compromised by a cyber attack. It's currently unclear if customers have been affected, according to a newspaper report. So arguably, don't install any new updates. Close GeForce Experience. If you were using GeForce Experience, then they probably have your password, if this is true, for GeForce Experience. So obviously use alternate different passwords for every website. They probably have your email. The bigger danger certainly would be, are they getting information that would allow them to create security vulnerabilities in video cards, to hide viruses in video cards, RAM, and firmware. That would be about as much as I would be concerned about, though. I wouldn't be super concerned about it. Like, Nvidia as a business doesn't do a lot of interactions with people. Like, I suppose if you'd at some point potentially bought a Founders Day edition of a video card directly from Nvidia, they might have your credit card information, but typically that's always done by like third-party people. If this information gets leaked and AMD or Intel tried to use that information to improve their own video cards, there might be an espionage claim against those companies from that leak, so it's probably not worth it to even look at any kind of potential leak like that. This certainly does highlight the problem of Microsoft demanding everybody move to Microsoft emails and Microsoft accounts, because yeah, the second Microsoft gets hacked, every single Windows 11 user is going to have their emails and their passwords compromised. Not that Windows is particularly secure in the first place. And apparently Windows 11, or just Microsoft in general, does not really let you make a kid's account on Windows without your kid having an email, which is the last thing I'd want to do if I was locking down a kid's account on Windows, is to start by giving them an email address. So that just seems ridiculous, amongst many things that every part of Microsoft does seems to be ridiculous outside of the gaming aspect, and it really does make an argument that we probably should see the split between we probably should see a split between Microsoft and Microsoft Gaming, and they should probably be a different company, because the Microsoft that exists outside of the Xbox division is really a collection of ridiculous side projects and just cliques and tribes all fighting for power, and it doesn't make good sense. Alright. Well, let's do this then. I may not be able to do this actually. So we'll probably have to get a follow-up as far as what actually is leaked from Nvidia, and it probably will be slow. Guess we'll set this down facing downward as if they're traps. Let's see, Amazon US is shipping some Gran Turismo 7 orders a week early. Which, okay. These things happen. Evo 2022 confirms Nintendo has chosen Smash Brothers will not return. This will mark the first Evo event without the series since 2013. Which, yeah, Nintendo has never really liked Smash Brothers being at the Evo fighting tournament. I think in particular because they wanted people to play the most recent Smash Brothers and the people at Evo wanted to play older versions of Smash Brothers, which, yeah, it just really goes to show how Nintendo is kind of controlling. Although in this case, it was also announced that Evo has been acquired by Sony Interactive Entertainment, so this also doesn't really make the most sense that Smash Brothers would be allowed. Now, a much better question is, why does Nintendo have to give permission? I don't know. Like, there really isn't a good reason. Like, I don't think you can claim copyright infringement legitimately here and win a case. And this would be kind of a great fight to potentially see happen, where Sony says, you know what, we've got the lawyers and we've got the money, let's just do Smash Brothers anyways. We'll live stream it. If they try to take it down on the DMCA, we'll counterclaim it and we'll leave it up, and we don't even have to do the whole YouTube we need to protect our safe harbor thing. They can just straight up leave it up as the original content creators and say, no, we don't need Nintendo's permission to have a tournament where people play a game. Like, because they really shouldn't. Like, it's not really like Evo is focused around the public broadcasting of some scripted storyline experience around Smash Brothers. Evo is about highlighting people manipulating the characters at a very high skill level, and highlighting that skill. And so effectively, while the underlying music and art and stuff is copyrighted, what they would be showing, I don't think actually is copyrighted. I would definitely make the argument that that most presentations of an interactive media like video games is much more the creation of the person playing the video game than the original person who created the puzzle pieces that the video game makes up. But yeah, I bet Sony doesn't want to make that fight, because if Sony did make that fight and win, and it turns out that it is fair use to show people in a fighting tournament playing any kind of video game, then that probably opens up a precedent that Sony Movies, Sony Pictures also would weaken their own copyright claims, or Sony Interactive Entertainment would weaken its own copyright claims as far as potentially DMCAing people playing Sony games. So I bet that fight never happens. Okay, moving on. We are now finally at new news. They have listed every confirmed Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So they announced Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and I have to say I'm disappointed just in the fact that they are once again splitting the games up. I thought and had hoped Pokemon Legends Arceus as one game had established that precedent that they don't need to make two different games. Particularly in this case, Scarlet and Violet, it's questionable which one is even supposed to be for girls and which one's supposed to be for boys, because Scarlet and Violet both sound like girls characters. It's just another red and another kind of blue color. The list of Pokemon is not super long here. I didn't actually watch the reveal trailer, but I'm not gonna watch it and get content IDs on screen, so apologies. I'll just watch it off screen. At the reveal trailer, there's a Japanese guard opening a door. Behind the door is light. It's all live action. Behind the door is a bunch of stuff, art stuff. There's something spooky happening in this room. Things are going crazy. But this is just all a live action teaser trailer. And then the guard got sucked into a bright light. So the first minute and 20 seconds of the trailer, which is only about 3 minutes and 15 seconds, was live action nonsense. Alright, so I'm seeing an open world, I'm seeing Pokemon all over, like Pokemon Legends Arceus. It definitely is modern Pokemon, and I'm seeing windmills, so it seems like it is a somewhat modern environment. The feeling is that this might be some kind of Mexican Spain area. No, I think it's Spain, not Mexico. There's this flags and pillars and yeah. So I would kind of assume that there's a there's a modern room, there's a Nintendo Switch in the modern room. They've now jumped back to the live action Nintendo Switch in the room. It is a white Nintendo Switch, which is something new. It's very much just a teaser trailer. And then they show a painting of 3 new starter Pokemon in the live action, which frankly 2 of them feel like they're grass types. Which is a little weird, because there's a duck, and then there's I guess maybe the duck is a water type. Yep, sure doesn't show a lot, and people are very hyped, so they're just moving forward with the hype when there's really not a lot to talk about. But I would say my main disappointment here is that they've split the game up. They didn't show new hero characters as far as who you're playing as. It's very possible that with Scarlet and Violet there won't actually be a character, and it will have a character creator instead, which that would be a step in the right direction also. Even if it was a fairly limited Pokemon art style character creator, there should be a character creator in the game. There almost certainly is a character creator that the creators of Pokemon games are using now. I don't think that they moved over to a new engine, so I kind of still feel like that they need to make some improvements on performance compared to Arceus, which had that problem. Here's what the screenshots show. You have this Pokemon cathedral-like environment in a kind of observatory. There's a screenshot here of a modern place, and here's the white Nintendo Switch. There is a character here. Guess we could see. So you have a female character, unless these are shorts. This might be actually a male character. Yeah, I guess this is a male character, and that's just kind of an awkward angle. He's got what kind of looks like a pocket for Pokemon cards, but I guess that would be a Pokedex. He's wearing a collar and a tie, which says something. He's wearing kind of a backpack too, so it feels like a Japanese or like more uniform requiring school outfit. He's wearing a hat. Then you have like pretty terrible fabric images here, as far as, hey, we don't have fabric physics in our game. They're kind of highlighting some mistakes, and it's not like these round parts here look particularly great either. That's a bad choice. There's this like Dragonite fountain. I'm surprised I even knew the name of that Pokemon. Fields. Here you have what I would assume is a girl. She seems to be wearing shorts also, so it may just be that they are relatively young characters and they're both wear shorts. The draw distance isn't showing a lot when you consider that the ocean in the skybox is probably simple. Not a lot of foliage. And then the grass looks alright for the screenshot, but this is all probably pre-rendered. Then you have this big flag, like central square, that looked interesting. Some of these screenshots actually look pretty bad compared to even the reveal trailer. You have a Meowth. You have some other Pokemons. You have these windmills, which, okay. Here you can see another angle of the square. I suppose it would slightly make sense if Sword and Shield was the beginning of a European journey and you wanted to potentially have some of the events of Sword and Shield, if anybody even remembers that, mentioned or touched upon. It would kind of make sense to move to a place like Spain and stay in Europe. And if anything, Arceus lets you go back to Japan in an ancient Japan way. But I feel like that split is unnecessary. Moving on to other Pokemon news, Pokemon Legends Arceus is getting a free Daybreak update today. Which, yeah. The update is to celebrate Pokemon Day. It comes with new missions, battles, and outbreak species, I guess. I also had kind of hoped with Arceus that they would have stuck with Arceus a little bit longer and taken a bit of a break and only released a new Pokemon game every couple of years instead of potentially releasing a game every 2 years, which is quite a lot. But yeah, there really was never any reason to have any faith with Nintendo and Pokemon Company in particular, that they weren't going to just try and milk the Pokemon fandom as much as possible. That's all they've ever done, is just milked their fandom as much as possible. Darn it. Well, then I guess I'll just try this. See if that destroyed his strategy or not. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the Tokyo Game Show has confirmed public physical event for the first time in 3 years. Which, yeah. I really don't feel like the pandemic in Tokyo and in Japan is actually gone. But I kind of don't feel like it's actually gone anywhere. But I don't think we're going to get to a point where it's going to get any better either, so people are just going to have to accept the risks and evaluate the risks for themselves personally. It doesn't feel like the hospitals are going to get overwhelmed. If you were in Tokyo and went to the Tokyo Game Show, there might be an outbreak, people might get sick, a few people with comorbidities might die. If you're immunocompromised or have comorbidities, definitely reevaluate for yourself. But I think most of the Japanese are leaning towards the idea of if we're young and healthy, then that probably they're willing to take the risk to go to the Tokyo Game Show, which we need a Tokyo Game Show to highlight all the Japanese games that come out. Here we have somebody on the chat. It's been a long time since somebody's put anything in the chat, so I've not been paying much attention. So apologies for not immediately responding. We have an Alicia. It says VUR period FYI, which I don't know what VUR period stands for. So if you want to get back in the chat and explain that more, that would be helpful. Let's see, tribute one monster. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. This may very well just be chat spam, but even at this point, I'll take chat spam over no chat comment at all. There definitely was a case where I saw one YouTuber who literally did like a 3-hour Minecraft live stream. And he was just constantly and very efficiently talking to the chat. It was slightly annoying, I will admit, because half of the entire video was just talking to the chat and responding to individuals instead of actually watching a Minecrafter talk about what he's doing or actually play Minecraft. But on the other hand, I can see where if you are a sociable person and you like the idea of conversations happening, then I definitely could see the thought in that kind of experience, that Twitch live stream type of experience that I really have not had a lot of experience with. At best, I've gotten maybe 2 or 3 people in the chat talking to me directly or talking to each other a little bit. some of it that gets annoying, I will also say, is that you see the successful YouTubers thanking people for super chats, thanking people for donations, and the whole thing just feels like it's a begging fest, and just doesn't feel like it like it's focused on the game enough, and it feels kind of like the creator is trying to be as generous as possible and as gracious as possible, but they also kind of feel like they're trying to get the hype train so more people donate. Moving on. Apparently, Gabe Newell was spotted hand-delivering some Steam Decks, as I guess he has nothing better to do, or he was just trying to be trying to build up more coverage. There definitely is a point here where they are trying to hype the Steam Deck more than they've tried to hype the Steam machines or anything like that, so they've learned their lessons there. It's hard to really even believe, though, that this is Gabe Newell. He has looked healthier, certainly, but he's a really tall person, and he was really fat last time I saw him, and I frankly would have assumed he was walking with a cane. I wouldn't be surprised if this is Gabe Newell, that he literally decided to hand deliver this because he lived somewhere in the area and he wanted to go for a walk. As I understood it in the story, though, Gabe Newell delivered it, signed it, but handed it to a wife who had no idea who Gabe Newell is. So Gabe Newell said, if you had any problems, email me. And she's like, well, I don't even know who you are, so how would I be able to email you? Whereas most people who know Gabe Newell know that he notoriously is gabein@valve.com as far as an email address, and he seems to still be fairly obsessed around pretending like he reads all the emails, or actually does read all the emails, both of which are kind of a waste of his figurehead talents, which he is really just a figurehead of the company. He's not making a lot of decisions. I kind of would also like to know at what point he decided to leave New Zealand, or if he was kicked out of New Zealand, as like all foreigners may have been, because last we had heard of Gabe Newell, he was really having a great time, I think, in New Zealand. Maybe it was Iceland. And he was talking about potentially making a whole second office in New Zealand or Iceland. But I don't know if that really is going anywhere. Probably wasn't. It was probably just a lot of talk. Gabe Newell is definitely in danger of becoming a person that's just going to be full of a lot of baloney and a lot of talk, and not somebody that really should be listened to. He isn't quite to that point yet, but he's got to be careful. Moving on, apparently an unreleased F-Zero spinoff was complete, a former Nintendo producer confirms. Zero Racers was ready to release on the Virtual Boy, but the hardware was a flop. Okay, so this is Virtual Boy era. Which, okay, that's cool and all, but that doesn't really mean anything. If anything, this may just be a potential issue for Bayonetta 3 if Nintendo was willing to have a completed game just never be released. It is also possible that Bayonetta 3 may never be released, but it's a very different situation. The Switch is not a flop to start with, and I could see it being too expensive to just do the packaging and buying more cartridges and getting more of the hardware to release one more Virtual Boy game. Sorry, I keep going quiet. Like, I guess I'm falling into my own thoughts here. Not particularly that way. And we're still on Video Games Chronicles articles. Elden Ring looks like it looks likely to smash the Soul sales records in the UK. So it's like grotesque eye thing happening on this character. I did change my programming a little bit, by the way, to kind of automatically adjust for me running the macro program more than once, because it would break anytime I ran it 2 or 3 times. So I've now gone ahead and addressed that issue just by specifically on the Steam follow list, not looking at the exact column number that was the last one, but instead going back a few columns and then starting that way. Let's go and destroy one card. 50-50 chance of one of those being dangerous. And I chose poorly. Moving on, the Yakuza creator Toshiro Nagoshi is launching his own radio show. Which at a certain point, I guess that is so not related to video games, it's basically him leaving the industry for at least the radio shows aspect. Video Games Chronicles says Pokemon fans gather evidence that Scarlet and Violet could take place in a Spain-like region. I would say none of the regions in Pokemon games, though, have specifically been in any real regions. It's just been heavily inspired regions. I guess this is Scarlet and Violet as far as the flag, although I don't feel like that is specifically enough evidence. And so you have like a Pokemon tower here, and then you have a much more detailed real-world tower, which I don't think their engine can handle rendering something with that much details. And just like every little piece of junk in the live action scenes is now being poured over as if it is all going to be direct hints and true hints to what the game is actually going to be. Let's see. I think we've gotten one quick disconnect so far in 2 hours of playing. But yeah, I'm just hoping the next card expansion happens and there's just more cards for me to build a better deck after that. Let's see if there's anything else. Nope. This was the last picture that they feel like this implies something. Pac-Man Museum Plus has been confirmed for May and day one of the Xbox Game Pass release, which just feels like there already was a Pac-Man museum, and so once again they're just kind of selling the same thing. You may notice that Miss Pac-Man is still missing. They're very much either don't have the rights to Miss Pac-Man or butthurt in the fact that Miss Pac-Man was created when it wasn't supposed to be allowed to be created. It wasn't authorized. Let's go ahead and just special summon this. And draw a card. And go. Why is this one not able to attack? Let's see. Still Video Games Chronicles. March's PlayStation Now games have been revealed. Let's see. Shadow Warrior 3. And seemingly nothing else. What really nothing else other than Shadow Warrior 3. Other games include Crisis Remastered, Relicta, and Chicken Police, never heard of it, Paint It Red. I don't believe Paint It Red was particularly great. I don't think it was a particularly great game. Right. Oh, if I'd known this guy couldn't attack, I should have done this. Yeah, I could have won. Now I'm potentially risking a loss if he can do a clear and kill these two characters. So let's definitely not play this. Well, there would be no reason to play that anyways. Let's see, the Twisted Metal TV show has been picked up for a series. It'll debut on NBC's streaming platform Peacock. Still a terrible name for a streaming platform. I still feel like NBC is desperate to get anybody to play Peacock, to pay for Peacock, and they're trying to throw as much as possible at that service. And then finally, our last our last Video Games Chronicle article here is that FIFA will reportedly include crossplay and expanded women's leagues. The men's and women's World Cup will also be given prominence, which definitely feels like they are trying to move away from a focus of FIFA. Alright, so that puts us into the Gematsu articles, and we'll have to just wonder if we've covered these first few Gematsu articles. So we've got a visual novel game here, romance visual novel by this name for the PS4 and Switch, coming out June 23rd in Japan. We've got another romance visual novel coming to the PS4 and Switch on the same day, going by this name here. I think we had talked about this. Shadow Warrior 3 has its third gameplay trailer. The PlayStation Plus free games we've already talked about. Apparently Shadow Warrior Legends and Sonic Racing also included there. Mages teasing a Chaos Head Noah and Chaos Child double pack English release. We had talked about that. Okay. Let's just see if we can activate this. Well, you know what? Let's just activate this, and that way we can sacrifice this, and then maybe this will activate that, which means I shouldn't have activated that anyways, which I shouldn't have anyways. I'm still playing Super Auto Pets on my phone. I shouldn't be, but I am. I really have to question though how you unlock some of the later characters and get all the achievements, because they want you to get to level 3 pets, but you only have so many victories or losses to get up to that point, and like some of the pets in the achievements that I just haven't seen at all, and I kind of wonder if maybe they are something you have to buy a whole different collection of pets to get. So you may not be able to get all the achievements without spending money. And Super Auto Pets is a pretty dumb game overall. Let's see. Moving on to Kimetsu articles. Next Dragon Age right in the middle of production. Loopers for Switch launching June 2nd in Japan, including English subtitles. Octopath Traveler Champions of Continent launching this summer in the West. Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avengers 9 2 DLC character Jason Frundrick from Blaster Master 03 announced. Yeah, this is all old articles too. Hopefully that means Wednesday everything will be caught up. SD Gundam Battle Alliance first mobile suits and characters announced. Void Terrarium 2 concept art details and screenshots. I really wouldn't have sworn that Void Terrarium 1 had even come out yet, because I really wouldn't have been surprised if you had told me we were still waiting for the first game. Alright. Let's go ahead and end the turn. See, Taito milestones to become a series. We talked about that. Battle Spirits Connected Battlers has a second trailer. This is some CCG game. One of the things compared to like Shadowverse, these cards do unfortunately look like the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, where an alternate art style where the level was just a number 4 hanging off the corner here, and the color class was maybe over here, and then the attack was hanging over here, and the defense was over here, and then the description of what the character does was when you hovered on the card, and then they could just zoom in this picture a lot bigger to make it a full looking picture. Would be nice, because you see they're already kind of doing that on the field, so just make the picture bigger instead of showing one-for-one replications of what the cards look like in the actual card game. Just make the picture bigger and make that the big deal. In comparison, that's pretty much what you have here, is you just like full edge-to-edge printing, which wouldn't have been as easy to do or even doable when Yu-Gi-Oh started, but it's totally doable now, and it's definitely doable in digital formats. Yeah, you got a golden chest, as if that means anything other than getting 2 packs instead of 1. Alright. I suppose I did miss a login because I overslept. So, we're not going to get any new daily quests. As far as unlimited quests, what did we make some small progress in? We increased our duelist level, so that gets us to 21. So we'll continue to duel. Oh, I should probably mention that in doing daily quests, I did complete all of the solo mode here. I haven't touched this new solo mode, so I probably will get around to that at some point and make a special episode around that. Then we could certainly like try to see where we are right now as extra crafting material. Barely anything because the new cards we get are new cards, so we're not getting duplicates and redundants. So getting any closer to making the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck, yeah, we're not anywhere closer to that, unfortunately. Maybe we got this card, so maybe we're a little bit closer, but yeah, there's still a lot of packs that would have to be opened and a lot of things that would have to be done, like grinding and card crafting. Yeah, we had already talked about THQ Nordic acquiring the animated content studio Metric Minds. One Heroes, One Justice Midnight announced. I think we talked about that. Nintendo buying SRD, we talked about that. The Famitsu sales, I'm going to assume we talked about being updated. We already talked about the Ascent coming. And the Pokemon Presents. And the Enclave HD launching this summer. And the Xbox games freak out. I'm disorganized. I should have looked at all of this before, and if I hadn't started so late, I would have probably double checked this and started to realize that there was so much redundancy. If I had looked at all of that, I would have gotten rid of these redundant articles and we would be much further along. I will take a free victory. Need to be careful not to accidentally spend my last 600 gems for when the battle pass ends. We have about a month when that ends, I believe. Also, I'm not getting too many random cards anymore. I haven't seen a single random normal card handed to me. The Cult of the Lamb was confirmed for basically everything. We already talked about that. Babylon's Fall has a Combat 101 trailer and screenshots. Knockout City going free to play in the spring. Relayer Demos is now available in Japan and launches February 26th worldwide. Earth Defense Force 6 as its 4th trailer. I wish they could make a good Earth Defense Force game, but I have yet to see them come anywhere close to actually succeeding at that. The Boko Game Studio founders did a Q&A video part 1. These network problems, by the way, I have to 100% put on Konami. I have had 0 network problems for nearly a month now. And in fact, I probably should update my Wi-Fi my router firmware, but you know, right now is probably a bad time to do that. too, but I've had no Wi-Fi problems in over a month. I've had no internet service problems in nearly a full month. None of my other programs or apps are having network connection issues. I did think that my DNS crypt server potentially bouncing. I think it goes through Germany, so like I thought maybe at some point that might get DDoS'd or have some problems, but I've yet to see anything like that happen. So yeah, when I see network connections here, I just assume Konami is not paying enough for the servers. Yep, and I really wouldn't want to get hyped for this game Slitterhead, so I wouldn't watch this video. And I think we had talked about Ashwalkers coming out for the Switch on March 10th, and World Championship Boxing Manager being announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Let's see. Play this. Activate this. Give me the other ritual spell. Summon this. We'd already talked about Tencent acquiring 1C Entertainment. And I think we'd even talked about the free playable Portal Universe Short Aperture Desk Lab announced for PC. You know, I probably should just play this game fairly quickly. If it's not like, if it's not on Steam, if it's not VR, yeah, let's think about doing just a very fast, maybe live stream of this game, since it's going to be free to play. Let's see, follow and wishlist this. It does have Steam Deck compatibility, which apparently is now a thing. So when we look at games going forward, we'll have to look for that and see how many games have that. I'm a fan of Portal, so I don't have to wait for something like that. We might as well just look at it on day one. Finally, I get a normal card. I was starting to potentially wonder if there was a pool of normal cards you could get, and I had already gotten them all. Which would feel like it is far too early for something like that to happen. Komatsu has an article here. Digimon Survive characters trailer. Producer discusses the delay, tone, gameplay, and more. I saw someone cover like one of the Digimon MMOs that's relatively new and talk about how it was pretty awful. And yeah, there's definitely a danger that Bandai Namco just doesn't care enough about any of its anime license products, since they own the animes too, to make a good game. The same is kind of with the Sword Art Online and the and what was the other one? I think Ghost in the Shell might be a Bandai Namco game also. Alright. Special summon this from the deck. sacrificing this. Then I'm gonna sit on the rest of these as backups. At a certain level, I definitely do want a good Digimon game to exist, but I probably don't want it to be anything other than at most a 30-hour single-player narrative story game, which I don't know if that's really what Digimon fans want. And I kind of, much like Yu-Gi-Oh, would really appreciate if it just went back and retold the story of the Digimon cartoons. There's quite a few of them. There is probably a great way to get new life from old cartoons by just having them become the cutscenes in between a video game. As for this screenshot here, this definitely looks like a cell phone game, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be something like a gacha game where you're just trying to collect all the Digimon. And I don't even know if there are that many Digimon to particularly care about if we look at the blurred out trailer here. You have what looks like the first character potentially from the first series, I think, although there's been a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh characters with goggles, not Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon characters with goggles on their head, but they definitely look older, still not quite to the point where I would just assume that they were college age. They're still in a school, obviously, so I would kind of assume that this is late high school. And in a funny way, they have been quite smart, I think, in not aging up the characters very fast and taking 20 or 30 years to age up the Digimon characters. Although arguably maybe they need to introduce new Digitamers to replace the older ones. Or maybe not. Maybe you just stick with the characters people like. If it works, don't fix it. As to actual gameplay, there's barely any shown here, but it does seem like it is more of a positional placement RPG event. If I can actually get the video to... Yeah. It does definitely just feel like that. Alright, well... Let's do this. Special summon this. Sacrifice this. Face up. But I definitely do want to see Digimon succeed in some way as a video game, because I know there's a fandom there, and it's a big enough fandom, and I can definitely see where it would be nice for that fandom to not get the short end of the stick always. If we could take half of the bad Pokemon games and throw them out, and half of the same Pokemon game such as Scarlet and Violet, if you could merge that into one game and then take the energy made from those bad Pokemon games and the extra unnecessary Pokemon games, if that energy had been put into making Digimon games, that probably would have been nicer. Moving on, Komatsu says the next Digimon story game is still in development, set in the digital world and themed around Olympus 12, which I don't know what Olympus 12 is. That seems like something. Alright, well, we're gonna have to burn through a lot of games here. So we have something here called Steel Shell. It's probably an asset flip game, but I will put it on the fall list and just see. At 74 cents, it's probably not worth really considering. Here we have a anime RPG Chevalier History, which, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be making a lot of decisions today, so that can just be on the fall list also. Mass Energy Soldier looks like nothing. I'm not seeing any Steam Deck verified links, so I would have to just assume that we generally are not going to see that very often. Here we have something called Rydo Mystery Escape Room. This probably is just an asset flip escape room. Interestingly, it's called a Mystery Escape Room, but it seems like it's mostly outside too. Again, I'm just not gonna put a lot of energy mentally into any of these. If it doesn't look like absolute garbage, I'm gonna put it on the fall list. This fortunately does look like absolute garbage, and it is Chinese only. And we will have to keep an eye to see how many Chinese games and how many Russian games are released here. There has been a fairly large push to not sell anything Russian, even if you had already bought the product. And it will be interesting to see if that sentiment stays for a while in the United States and America. If there was a true Buy American movement where people are just not willing to buy products that are cheaper that come from other countries like China and Russia, that might be very interesting. But I suspect that this is going to be a short-lived experience. There's a big difference between people having knee-jerk reaction and removing things from their shelves to sell, and a true embargo where the government says no, you can't sell any Russian products at all. It will be for the future to show us, certainly, as far as what repercussions happen from this whole Russian invasion of Ukraine in the first place, and how severe and how long-lasting those repercussions are. Let's go ahead and grab the other one. Here we have a game on Steam called Three Sons, which I think is probably not visually polished enough and seems to be mostly text-based. So I'm gonna run the risk of saying no to that one. An FPS game dev test, we can obviously say no to. What I am noticing though is it does seem like you can't just click a box and say a game is Steam Deck verified, which is great. Three Finger Battle Arena. Seems like Valve is actually verifying the games themselves. Here we have a game called Gangsta The Return, which just looks like an asset flip. It's doing the old Steam achievements, which are just the same picture with a number over them. Which, yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen that happen. Here we have something called Hamster Blitz. There might be a game here. There's an interesting question, certainly, as far as early access games. Would Valve or should Valve verify any game that on the Steam Deck that's in early access? I would lean towards no. This Beastie Land, I think I can say no to also. But yeah, having like a tighter control and making it a punishment, punishing people that make early access games and never finish them might be a great thing. This Weapon Simulator's ideas look alright, but the visuals look awful. Seeing having like different type of animal silhouette metal plates to shoot at is an interesting idea, but then next to red explosive barrels is a little silly. So it's going between realism and not realism. Fantasy. Let's see. See if this works. See if he can do anything else. I feel like he's gonna just concede there. Here we have one called Sadra Namala, which this feels very much like a Coco Melon port of some kids game in some other language. Free Arabic. Says it has English subtitles. I would question that to be true. I don't know if this is some kind of Arabic game or something, but it really does not look like anything of importance. There we go. And what do we got? We have Gorgon's Eye. I recognize that card. And Ancient Lizard Warrior. Look at the art on some of these really old cards. It totally would make sense to like redraw and re-release some of these older cards. Because even like a normal card like this, it's probably old enough that it has some rarity and some value to it. Just reprinting the same art over and over again is a little lazy. Here we have a game on Steam called A Night with Jigsaw, or Gigjaw. I guess is what it says, is Gigsjaw. I don't know why you couldn't just say Jigsaw. I don't think somebody owns the copyright on that. But clearly this is just a low effort asset flip game. Here we have a loot box RPG. Which I can definitely say no to that quickly. And Baba Yaga, Wood Boy. I think the visuals here just don't look good enough. I know this is probably somebody going for an art style, but it's not a good art style. Plus, if I ignore the art style, it still just kind of feels like it's a kind of generic horror game. So yeah, I can dismiss that. Right. Back to Gamatsu. Gamatsu. The Digimon games producer is positively considering a Digimon World port, remaster, or remake, which positively considering just, I suppose, means you don't immediately reject the idea. But of course, you'd have to have funding, and funding would mean somebody would have to say there's actually an artist here. We'd already talked about the Pokemon Legends Arceus version 1.1.0 update, Daybreak. They're calling it Daybreak. As far as just a named update. Or code named Daybreak. I guess the question really is, was there some percentage of Western kids, or even Japanese kids, that looked at Pokemon Legends Arceus and said, I don't want to play that game because that game looks like it's set in the past and it won't have technology in it? Like, I don't know if there really would be any kids that would be like that. You could see them potentially say, I don't want to play that game because it doesn't have the newest Pokemon in it. Or, I don't want to play that game because it doesn't have gym battles in it. And I really love gym battles and collecting the gems. I don't know if there really is a fandom out there for any of those things, though. As much as people just like the Pokemon and want to do whatever you can do with Pokemon. I'm a little shocked that there isn't a new version of something like Hey You Pikachu, where it's just a virtual pet with your Pokemon. Some kind of mobile phone game that's not built around text. Although at this point, you could literally make a remake of Hey You Pikachu and talk directly to it and have it respond fairly accurately with voice detection. Anyways, we talked about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet being announced. There's definitely an argument also against not telling your kids about every single new Pokemon game. If they don't hear about it from their friends, and they don't get hyped about it. So this is the grass type starter. And this is your fire type starter. And it's just grass fire. It's not any special combination. And this is your water type starter. Let's see. One of the main characters you'll set off on your adventure. Your outfit will vary depending on whether you play Scarlet or Violet, but seemingly you can play as a boy or girl in either game. So there is no boy version or girl version, which I think that is definitely a step in the right direction. Yeah. But yeah. So you assume you're going to get different Pokemon in Scarlet versus Violet, and you need both. But these kids look like they're in either late elementary, mid-junior high. They've got these pockets for Pokedexes and Pokeballs. They're both wearing ties with a short pocket and shorts. So it seems like there's really no difference here. No skirts for the girls. Below the knee socks. So if you play Scarlet, that's the outfit. If you play Violet, this is the outfit. So you get a slightly different skin. And arguably, I can see people liking the red shorts and hating the white lines in the shorts. And the fact that they have like drawstrings hanging out from the top is a little weird too, as a choice. Like I would think a kid was having trouble dressing himself, frankly, if he had he or she had drawstrings hanging out from the top of her pants. Because my understanding is you were supposed to tuck in any kind of drawstrings like that. this is basically the same image, which I assume is pre-rendered. You can see it's kind of a blob of texture back in the back, and then less of a blob back here, and then some actual like individual leaf textures it looks like in the front, and then flowers here, and then just kind of grass here, and it seems like the grass gets more blobby about this point. Apparently we'll have Pokemon Home connectivity, so that sounds good. But they really haven't said a lot, so there's not a lot to get hyped about, or nothing you really should get hyped about. Gematsu has this week's Japanese game releases, being Avalon's Fall, Doraemon, Nobita's Little Star Wars for Switch, Elix 2, The Forgotten City, Gran Turismo 7, Rugby 22, and Triangle Strategy. Is this really what came out this week? I guess it did. Wow. A lot of those games I thought had already come out. Maybe they're just coming out to Japan, or they're just coming out to more platforms in Japan. I don't know if I can survive this. I may have lost. Alright, one ritual monster. Might as well activate a spell. We might as well summon a character. It gives us experience at least. Of course, this is what slows down the game, where really I would just like to call it a day and concede. Let's see, moving on, Gematsu says Persona 4 Arena Ultimax for PS4 and PC is going to add rollback netcode this summer, which seems kind of silly to add it after the fact, but better to add it after the fact than never add it. Let's see. The Tokyo Game Show will be held as a physical event for both businesses and general visitors. I guess maybe some of the previous years' Tokyo Game Shows weren't completely canceled, they were just not open to the public, which would make sense. The Persona 25 Anniversary Festival is set for May 28th to July 10th at the Tokorozawa Sakura Town, which I don't know if that's a real place or not. And with the 25th anniversary, do we expect there to be a real announcement of a new Persona game in the main line, or just a new Persona game spin-off, or just nothing new for Persona at all? I wouldn't be surprised if there's very little that's announced, and maybe just nothing's announced. Like, the thing you could do fairly easily is bring out Persona 1 on cell phones and just make a rough and dirty port of Persona 1. Or just put out a teaser for the next mainline Persona. Moving on, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has a 24-minute official gameplay walkthrough and screenshots, which I guess this is the one that isn't out yet. They've created quite some confusion by re-releasing the Borderlands 2 DLC as a standalone game. to build up hype for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. But it definitely created a backlash and is just confusing whether... Like, if you'd asked me 5 minutes ago, has Tiny Tina Wonderlands been out? I would have said, yeah, it came out 3 months ago and nobody cared about it. That would have been what I thought off the top of my head. Finally, just take forever to just win. We've been going 3 hours. Young Souls for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC launches March 10th. This is not a game I recognize. Which I guess that makes sense since it's not out. It's rated M for mature. I wouldn't have expected that. Looks like it is a hack and slash beat 'em up 2.5D side scroll game with some heavy RPG elements, leveling up characters. In a lot of ways, it feels like it's probably a dungeon crawler, although they're calling it a beat 'em up. Guess at this point, I have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Let's see. This event duration ends today, so this has already been tallied as far as my season rank. So if I was to go up in the rank, probably doesn't matter. If I was to go, yeah, I can't go up in rank, I can't go down in rank. It's been that way this whole time. So we're here. We'll get like maybe 100 gems. But the question is, where will we get any of these previous gems? Ideally, it would be nice if we did. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't. That these are one-time rewards. I'm really not that close. I think at most I maybe has gotten up to gold 3. But maybe not even that high. Maybe I have just been stuck at gold 5. I have to have been at gold 4 at some point throughout this season. But it would be really hard to get the platinum one with the cards I have. Says Season 3 is now opened and we are at Silver Tier 5. Interesting. Do I want to play more? Or do I want to just leave it? I think I will just leave it. So here's a note. With the start of a new rank season, your rank will drop to the lowest tier of the rank below the rank you had before the new season. Before the new season, Silver Tier 1, that drops you to Bronze Tier 5. During the rank duels periods you won, you won't be demoted from Platinum Tier 5 to Gold Tier 1. Your rank will increase as you win a certain number of things. So they seemingly have changed it again, although I don't know if they've changed it in a good way. I also don't see anything that feels like a special reward, so if I'm at now Silver Tier 5, that means I can go back and win 500 gold to get back to Gold Tier 5, and then 200 gold if I can get to Gold Tier 5, and then yeah. So it's not putting you back all the way to the beginning, so you still can't get like 300 gold here. So your best bet, if you were just trying to get free gems, would be to play to Bronze Tier 1, then have them drop you to Rookie, get to Rookie 2, and then get from Rookie 2 to Rookie 1, and get all that gold again, and then only play up to Bronze Tier 1, and then drop again. But yeah, that's just not going to happen for most people. Let's just cover the news then. The Pac-Man Museum Plus launches May 27th. This is kind of an interesting interface, but it's probably not a good interface. It's probably an interesting background image, and that's about all you could say for it. In Zone: A World Apart Survivor Edition is coming to the PS4 and Xbox Series on May 19th. And then the PlayStation Now adds Shadow Warrior, Crisis Remasters, Relicta, and Chicken Police Paint It Red. Oh wait, is Chicken Police Paint It Red not the game called Paint It Red? No, so I have no idea what Chicken Police Paint It Red is then, unless they change the name. Here we have a game on Steam called Whale, which looks like nothing worth mentioning. Here we have something called Frouse, which I don't think is visually polished enough. And this might be a Chinese only game. Even at that though, we've only seen like 2 or 3 Chinese only games today. It's not like we've seen a particularly small number of games that came out. Here we have a visual novel. I think we can pretty much say no to this. I think I am going to be fairly strict going forward as far as visual novels. And what I mostly am going to allow is probably the Moe lewd visual novels, and then eventually I'll have to play one, and then when I actually play one and realize I can't make any footage for YouTube from it, I'll probably remove all the Moe lewd ones. This Unity-chan Simulator, English and Japanese, but really just feels like it's a asset flip game. It's all about like posing and programming these models, which is probably a better way to do that. Being stronger while playing. Looks like it's just a mobile port on how to play Go. Almost want to give this a chance though. I would like to really learn how to play Go, but unfortunately I just looked at that price at $40 and nope, it is not worth $40 for a pretty bad looking Go simulator game. Looks like this could have been in a 3DS port of something. Let's see, Magic Thief is just a Minesweeper clone. It looks alright. It's English and Russian, so we did get at least one Russian game. First time in Paris. I imagine people like Valve may have some level of existing contracts and fear of being sued for bad faith in a contract if they didn't allow something to be listed. But I imagine Valve will stop new things and change its rules fairly quickly, but if something was in the process of being listed, I bet they will let a Russian game still be listed. And it's always been the assumption for years that half of these Russian troll games are either money laundering or just trying to irritate people, or maybe even trying to install spyware. I don't know if that's really happening that much. This is just a hidden object game, so obviously no. Dark Journey, survival horror game. Don't think we need to put this one on the fall list. Its visual polish is just a little lacking. Yeah, and that's just not the kind of game I really would want to play. This is all from the same person, so they may be flooding the Steam marketplace. Dinner Runners. Very different looking game. Also not particularly interesting. So they put out 2 games at the same time, which is kind of silly. Dragon Evo. Looks like a card game. Maybe a deck building game. But I think I can say no to that too. Yeah, I'm going to be a bit more cruel and considerate as far as what collectible card games I'm even going to consider. Race on the Ice, obviously we can say no to. It looks like garbage. With Yu-Gi-Oh! Working pretty well, there's not a lot of reason to think about checking out other collectible card games. This also looks terrible and is Russian only, so that's 2 or 3 Russian games. Unnamed Arcade Engine looks like garbage. It's entirely possible though a lot of these garbage games that only support the English language are made by people from non-native English speaking countries also. There's no way to really know. This Unfair Car Stunts, again, is a no. Pipe Connect. Real World Pipe Puzzle Game. It is a single screen Unity game. I will have to admit that, but I don't really hate this idea enough to immediately reject it, so I'm going to put that on the follow list. See what other people say. Imagined Leviathans. Some kind of walking simulator. Instead of thinking about it, I'll just put it on the follow list. Although, at a certain point, if something is coming soon, I shouldn't even bother to put it on the follow list. Ring of Fire. Looks like it might be an interesting detective game. It's already on the follow list. And it is coming soon also, so I'm going to take it off the follow list. Human Apocalypse. Looks like nothing. So we can say no to that. Duel. I don't know what language that is. It looks like it might be kind of a weird point and click horror game. I'll put it on the follow list. That's English and French languages. Kingdom Life is a 4X strategy game of no interest. I guess the question is there a way to get a game verified to work on the Steam Deck easily? I wouldn't be surprised if there is no way to get on a list or anything to get it accelerated. And eventually it will just be when you submit a game, it will be tested on the Steam Deck by default. Way Down might be something, might be nothing. Meteo Heroes. Almost thought it said Metro Heroes. Might be a kid's game as a platformer. Looks colorful. So we'll give it a follow. Trail Time Reborn. Looks like nothing. So we can dismiss that. Dark Prophecy. It might be a point and click experience here. So follow that. English and Russian. Again. Pets at Work. Looks like it's just a generic platformer. Well, I do like the solid color aesthetic there. The actual gameplay is lacking on first glance. Eco Island. Looks like it's a resource management city builder. Buried. Looks like a garbage asset flip. Gamma Space. Looks like nothing. I said in the last stream that I should just stop saying no so much and just highlight the yeses and just try to make people assume that if I'm not saying anything and not putting it on the follow list, then it is just getting rejected. I'm gonna try and lean for that, certainly, but I still very much am in the old habits of just saying no. Facility 386 here just looks like an RPG Maker garbage game. English and Russian. Heart and Soul as a young maiden visual novel around mythology. There might be something to that. Learn about mythology, Greek mythology, to some level. I don't know to what level of accuracy. Boomer Slayers, on the other hand, it's just low polygon junk. And then we have 5 GameDeveloper.com articles, and we have like 15 follow list games, which I think I changed the number as far as how many follow list games get open. No, I ran the macro twice is what I did, so I think 5 follow list games every stream is probably fine, particularly since it will always be at the end of a stream and it will always be pretty exhausted at that point. Let's see, we had already seen their article about Jet to Far Shore. We don't need to cover that again. We had already talked about Tencent acquiring 1C Entertainment. Valve's boss, quote unquote boss, I would say, Gabe Newell, doesn't regret banning sketchy NFTs from Steam. The people in the NFT space, though, tend to be involved in a lot of criminal activity and a lot of sketchy behaviors. End quote. Which, fair enough. I don't think anybody has really complained about NFTs being banned or blockchain being banned from Valve and Steam. Turning road noise into music in many motorways, as far as a design article from GameDeveloper.com. Check out that article if you're interested. CD Projekt Red, Amada, State of Play, Cry, TiVo, and more pledge financial aid to Ukrainians. I believe this is also updated to say more studios. Thunderful Games followed the example. Huge games with 3 U's. Each one of these really could have been their own story. It's not like GameDeveloper.com needs to have only 6 articles instead of just making it all one story. Like, if you're going to update an article, it really should just be because you're correcting something, or but I guess the way the internet works, it's better to get everybody to go to your one page than to try to have 5 pages. I guess that's the thought process. Apparently Activision Blizzard is being sued by a shareholder over the Microsoft deal. Shareholder Kyle Watson claims Activision Blizzard's SEC filing is missing key information, which, yeah, we'll see how far that goes. I doubt it would stop the acquisition. I doubt much can stop it. And then they have check out some old classic games at GDC Arcade Play. So this is just an advertisement. And classic games here include Diablo 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, Civilization, Chess Master, Street Fighter 2, Adventure for the Atari, which is much older than something like Diablo 2, Bryce 3D, Killer Instinct, Wolfenstein, QBasic, not really a game, Marathon. So I'd kind of have to assume that the oldest game here is Adventure for the Atari, and the newest game, if I was to guess, maybe Diablo 2, but it might be Killer Instinct. Yeah. Might even be Twisted Metal too. That is a wide age time frame to call those all classics. And then we had already talked about the Twisted Metal series debuting on NBC's Peacock service. Still not really sure what that series is going to look like or feel like. And then we have the fall list cleanup. We have your Peculiar Tales of Mid-Lake Pavilion, which is rated very positively as a visual novel. Okay, well, do I want to say yes to this, or do I want to say no to this? I think we just go yes on this. Doesn't mean I have to buy it and play it. And then this game is mixed as a pixel noir game, so I can say no to that. And then this one, I guess I can just give more time to. Peace Death 2, I think we can say yes to because it's overwhelmingly positive. Although I'm not 100% sure I really would want to play this game. PCI Public Crime Investigation, I think needs more time. Let's see if it's relevant. PBA Basketball Slam Edition, I'm gonna give more time to. Pawnbarian, looks like it's gonna be a yes. You definitely say yes to a lot more. Pawn of the Dead as a chess game. I guess that is also a yes. I don't know how many chess games I need to get though, since I already own Tabletop Simulator now. Paw Paw looks like a beat 'em up game, so that can be yes also. Paw Patrol, unfortunately, it's mostly negative, so that's gotta go. And that tends to be the way it goes for really young kid games, because they tend to be pretty awful. Paw Patrol. Mighty Pups Saves Adventure Bay also can be no. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Is this a single player experience? Yes it is. Is it out of early access? Yes it is. So I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be on the wish list. Even though it is very possible that this Pathfinder game is a spin-off of other Pathfinder games and you'd kind of need to have played previous Pathfinder games. Pathfinder Kingmaker Enhanced Edition. Very possibly being the first in the series you should play. Patch Quest. I'm not sure what kind of game is happening here, and I don't want to really consider it, so I'm just gonna assume this is a top-down twin-stick shooter for the most part, where you lasso kind of the Pokemon. Okay, I can see that, but it's early access anyway, so I can just leave it. Passengers of Execution needs more time. Veritas needs more time, slightly more time. Parking Slide is a point-and-click puzzle game. It's not in early access, so we can add that to the wish list. Paranormal Stories. I think we could probably remove this. This is just kind of a hidden object game. Yeah, so that goes. Paranormal Detective Escape from the 90s. Needs more time. Parallelly needs more time. Paradise Lost. Is this actually based on Paradise Lost? I don't think it is. You know, in Fallout 3, you find a book called Paradise Lost, and apparently it is an edible aid item. So I either read it or ate it as I was wrapping up things, and I was like, what is this supposed to do? I have no idea. Probably doesn't do anything. It's probably just an inside joke. Anyways, Paradise Lost as a game can go on the wish list. Then Paper Bride as a horror game is rated very positively. So that can go on the wish list too. Alright. So then that leaves us at 3 hours and 25 minutes for me to open up 27 new Twitter tweets just to see if there's any new news. In all honesty, there's probably not any new news worth talking about. Fingers crossed now my program / macro is working perfectly and we won't have a lot of redundant things like we did today. Xbox gamers in Japan, they now have a Japanese exclusive newsletter called Xbox Wire, which, yeah, Japan has been, Xbox has wanted to do that for a long time. Cyan is having a Cyan cake day where it's just people cooking cakes as a cake contest, and they're, I guess, encouraging people online to make cakes and show them off too. I don't think there's much more to it than that, though. It doesn't seem to be really connected to anything, and it's the second one, so I assume this is a case where this is a case where they've done it before. There is also an argument that if you have seen what you liked about the Steam Deck, you probably should order it now or wait for the second generation. They're going to probably raise the price and try and make an even bigger version, is where they're kind of focusing on. And so a bigger, more powerful one that's even more expensive, I think, will happen, and maybe they'll call that Steam Deck 2.0, or maybe maybe they will actually leave that to be just yet another version of the Steam Deck 1. Apparently, the weapon attachment perks are being transferred between weapons for Raven Software games. I don't know. What Call of Duty Warzone, I assume, is what they're talking about. So yeah, the Xbox Wire officially launches in Japan to celebrate 20 years in the market. 20 years of not succeeding at all in the Japanese market. But it's the right move. It's just, frankly, 20 years too late. Really goes to show that they've kind of failed. And they've even made their own little avatar waifu anime character that doesn't quite look like what you would expect for one of these characters, but clearly is focused around the Xbox specifically. And that is not the official character, I'm fairly certain, as far as the Tokyo Game Show. And then GameDeveloper.com also said that the Playdate software development kit has been made public and it's totally free. Which I don't think anybody is ordering more Playdates or getting any more Playdates received. The only thing that's kind of interesting about the Playdate was its screen. The crank is a gimmick. The form factor is awful. The idea of programming little games that are basically just WarioWare games doesn't make sense. I don't think it has anywhere enough room to put a full game that you would expect in there, even if it was like a text-based game. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.